And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ BPTV. Streaming live on a Sunday. Very happy to be here with you all. Thank you for tuning in. And yes, indeed, we are getting into the addictive nature of BJJ. Now, this is a bit of a topic that we don't talk about because we're all jiu-jitsu addicts. So it may seem a bit naff to talk about, say, oh, jiu-jitsu is addictive, so terrible. We love it. We're not going to talk about how bad it is, but there are some downsides. So even though there's a lot of upside, there is one or two downsides. And I guess it's the darker side of BJJ, which we don't talk about, which takes us out of the game. So let's talk about, we're going to go over a few little topics. And for any of you out there, if you feel free to debate me, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying. You can just say, no, I don't agree with that. And that's cool. We can talk about it. But I'm going to give some pretty solid examples. And I definitely appreciate for you guys to chime in and let me know your thoughts. So first, the first cab off the rank is talking about flow state and how jiu-jitsu gets us into a flow state very easily. And that's part of the reason why we love it, is this vibe of not thinking and really just being very much in the moment. And then the second is the post-roll high, and all the hormones get flooded into your bodies from such intense exercise. It's awesome. But the thing about that is we get that high and then we are chasing the BJJ Dragon. That's subject number 3. And this is a problem. And this is a problem. We're going to talk about heroin addiction. Even though that's probably a dark parallel, we're going to talk about how heroin affects the body, and then also how all the positive hormones we get from jiu-jitsu affect the body, and then how that can actually have a similar effect with the whole idea of chasing the dragon. And then the fourth thing, guys, which is something that we definitely don't talk about in jiu-jitsu, which is just BJJ by itself isn't healthy. Now, you've probably seen it yourself. You've seen somebody out there who just trains jiu-jitsu all day, every day. They're just pour harder and they just live for jiu-jitsu, but they get broken. And eventually what happens is people get so injured they actually have to stop. And you might have experienced yourself. You've gotten 2 or 3 serious injuries. Like, man, I can't even walk up the stairs of my house. I can't play with my kid. I can't walk my dog. I'm going to have to take some time off. And then sometimes that time off turns into something a bit more long-term. So this is actually pretty important to talk about, guys. And it's the side of jiu-jitsu that no one talks about, because a lot of the top BJJ guys have career-ending injuries, and then we just don't talk about it because we're on to the next hot guy, right? So we're not talking about, well, the next hot girl, whoever's good in jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu has a very short memory life, so it's like 4 years. If you're not good inside of a 4-year window, then we don't care and you disappear out of reality. So let's get into it, guys. Number 1 is flow state. So for those of you out there, there's a great book called Flow, which is by Mishchak Mihai. Now, that's a bit of a name to pronounce. I think it's Tibetan, the name. Anyway, the gentleman is actually, I think, based in the UK, but he has written extensively on people getting into a flow state. And that's where you're in this kind of mindless state. You're not thinking, you're just doing. It's automatic. And it's an amazing feeling. It's when you're kind of on autopilot. And they say that athletes at the highest level are like that. They say sometimes surgeons can be like that. When you are a real master of what you do it without thinking. I guess you may have experienced it, guys, where you've been under acute stress and basically everything around you just fades out and you're just focused and zeroed in on one thing. And that is flow. And actually, it's a great feeling to be in that state because you're not worried about your car, you're not worried about your bills, you're not worried about your job, you're in flow. And it is a feeling of kind of great ecstasy, really. And it's because you're not worried at all. Now, flow is a hard thing to achieve unless you're really good at what you're doing. But the great thing about jiu-jitsu is whether you're good at it or not, when some big huge human sitting on your chest and they're trying to cross choke you, you have no choice but to focus on what you're doing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in flow per se, but it is a form of forced mindfulness. So we're going to kind of switch from flow, which usually involves a high degree of skill and you just really nailing your skills. And we're going to talk a little bit more about mindfulness. And this is similar as to what it does for your brain. So meditation, they say, is the best way to get into a form of mindfulness. But let's look at a heavy squat. When you have like more than your body weight on your back and you're squatting, all you can think about is, don't break my back, don't break my back. Like, you've got to really focus on your breathing, your technique, staying tight. And you can't think about anything else in that moment. It is a type of enforced mindfulness. Jiu-jitsu enforces that mindfulness, because when you're getting choked, you're like, man, I just got to get out of here. I can get it. I can. And then you're gone. I don't know how many of you out there have ever been choked out and you're like, oh, I can get out of this. I can totally get out of this. And then you're gone, right? So that's the thing. When you're under these positions of kind of extreme stress and trying to deal with this thing, you can't think about the outside world. And this is actually a great thing. And this is the relief of jiu-jitsu. This is why we love it so much, because when we come off the mat, we've just had a mental break from all the bullshit in our lives and we feel good because we haven't been caught up with the anxieties. We haven't been caught up with just the fears and the doubts and everything that can affect us in life. And we are good to get on with whatever else we're doing. And you would know what I'm feeling here, where you might go into jiu-jitsu feeling all kinds of things, but by the time you leave, it's not too bad. Like after you've had a hard training session, you just feel like your mind has been washed clean of the bullshit. And you're like, okay, now I can deal. And that is the real upside of jiu-jitsu. And that's part of the reason why we become jiu-jitsu addicts, jiu-jitsu fiends. Before you know it, you're moving your work roster around so you can go to open mats. Then you're like canceling family events so you can go to tournaments. And then you're also like ducking out on dates so you can go for a cheeky afternoon roll with your mates. Like, it takes over your life. Like, if you're like me and you do jiu-jitsu all day, every day, like you do it as much as you can, you will realize how much it does take over your life. I mean, I have built 2 significant businesses around Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've done whatever I can to keep myself close to the art because I love it so much. And the post-roll high, let's talk about that. That feeling when you just kind of walk off the mat, you're like steaming, you just absolutely exerted yourself to the fullest extent. You're full of dopamine, serotonin, you're just absolutely through the roof on all the happy drugs your brain can produce. Oxytocin, you've been squashed, you've squashed back, you had super high adrenaline. There's so many things that give you this real full-on high that nothing else gives you. Going for a run, as much as you can get runner's high, that's nothing compared to really good rolls at jiu-jitsu, right? Am I wrong? Let me know if I'm wrong here. Hit me in the comments, guys. And then also, if I'm preaching to the choir here, it is what it is, but there's a funny thing. You walk out of training, and there's been a couple of times I've walked out of training and, I'm in St Kilda. I'm not far from Grey Street, walking out of training at Absolute MMA St Kilda. Shout out, Absolute fam. Oh, and I think to myself, man, I've just trained my ass off for like 90 minutes, 2 hours. I'm exhausted. If someone tried to rob me right now, I'd be like, sure, man, take it. Like, I'm done. You haven't said. I can't even, I'm totally spent. I'm like a crumpled Coke can. So here's the thing, guys. I think the thing that we don't really appreciate within all of this is that post-training high cannot really be matched by anything. And even though that's great, even though that makes jiu-jitsu entirely unique, it is a dangerous thing too. And I'm going to explain why. Because if you've only done jiu-jitsu for a short amount of time, you probably are not privy to this. But when you get to be in the game for a bit longer, you've been in it like 5 years, 10 years, 14, 15, 20 years, you see it over and over again. People get into jiu-jitsu, they get the love, they get the jiu-jitsu bug, and something, and they're like, I'm going to do this to death. I'm going to do this until it kills me. And it's a recurring choice. So in that way, it's not to say obsession is better than addiction. If anything, it's possibly worse, because the person is like, no, I want this. I want to do this until, the wheels fall off. Whereas a person who's addicted feels like they're a victim of it and they have no say in it. Now, what happens, now this is a kind of a scientific account of what's going on in the body when someone takes heroin. Part of the reason why heroin is so addictive is that when people, it sounds a bit dark that I'm comparing heroin to jiu-jitsu, but I've kind of painted the picture of what jiu-jitsu can do for you in a chemical kind of way. And then we're going to switch over and talk about, like how this is a comparison. Now, when a person takes heroin, the body thinks it's dying. So it releases this huge cocktail of hormones and chemicals that give this insane high that can never be achieved again because the body literally thinks you are dying. So as a result, you get this huge chemical and hormonal response elicited in response to taking heroin. And the person is like, oh my God, that's the best feeling I ever felt. But here's the thing, you can never create it to the same extent again. And this is the chasing the dragon thing, guys. This is where it doesn't matter if you just keep taking heroin for years and years and years, you will never fully, truly touch that first initial high. Now, this is not true of jiu-jitsu. When you roll, you have good nights, bad nights, and provided you don't get brutally injured, you walk away and you think, oh, I feel better. Even if you lost every roll, you're glad you went and trained, right? Well, maybe some nights you want to just quit because you just got beat up by the new stud blue belt kid who's just whipping everybody. Damn those uppity blue belts. But truthfully, guys, the thing is, when we get that really good high at jiu-jitsu, and then someone goes, oh, do you want to go kayaking or you want to go bowling? You're like, nah, man, that's got nothing on jiu-jitsu. Like, why would I want to do anything else but jiu-jitsu? Because jiu-jitsu is going to just give me all those hormones. It's giving me the satisfaction of crushing, getting crushed, the mental stimulation, the problem solving, the enforced mindfulness, the flow state. It's got everything. But that said, here is the downside. If you do go to jiu-jitsu, and obviously you love it, you do it as much as you can, you will know your fingers start to get sore, right? And your neck starts to get a bit jacked up. And then you find your hip flexors are really tight. And then your lower back's really sore. And you're like, no, I'm good, I'm fine. And then you're just rolling with like the new guy and he just goes flat and moves, just sprawls on you and your knee goes tweak and you feel a little pop in your knee and you're like, oh, my knee's sore. Can't walk properly on my knee. I'll just strap it. It'll be fine. I'll just strap it. And you're like, man, I'm so exhausted. Oh, my body's aching. Oh, I'll just have a coffee. So you have another coffee. And then you just take a couple of anti-inflams. And you're like, oh, I feel better. Thank God. Then you start rolling. The adrenaline kicks in and you feel great. And you keep rolling. And then after training, your body's all achy and you feel terrible. And you're like, oh, man, I feel like shit. But you're like, but I've got jiu-jitsu tomorrow and I'm looking forward to that. And once the adrenaline hits, I'm fine. And so you get into this pattern of telling yourself it's okay. But I'll give you a case in point, and I'll give a very real world example. Good friend of ours, Marina. Marina's just kind of gotten on board with the Bulletproof team. You're going to be seeing a bit more. You're going to be seeing a bit more of her. She's awesome. She's been doing the program now for well over 4 months and has gotten really strong. She's a slim assassin, but she's so strong. Frothy jiu-jitsu white belt. Now, she's just come back to jiu-jitsu. Now, I saw her 2 weeks ago, and she was the strongest she has ever been. The woman weighs like 55 kilos. She deadlifted more than 100 kilos. She did like 9 pull-ups, like strong, doing awesome. Just like pressing really strong, like she's been doing the Bulletproof standards. She's nailing all the standards, super mobile, super strong. What a superstar. 2 weeks back at jiu-jitsu, she's hurt her elbow. She like got her arm kind of caught like in the back of someone's gi and her elbow popped, and then she hyperextended her knee. So when she came to train with me, I said, oh, how are you feeling today? She said, oh, a bit sore, like my elbow's not good. I can't do pulling and my knee's a bit sore. It's hard for me to squat. I was like, wow. In 2 weeks of jiu-jitsu, we've actually gone backwards like months. Like, so even though 2 weeks ago she was so strong and so on point, even though she's so happy to be back at jiu-jitsu, 2 weeks of jiu-jitsu has put her into pretty much injury town. Now, she doesn't need surgery. Like, all her ligaments are intact, but because of training and the wear and tear of training, she couldn't train properly when she was doing her session with me. And okay, let's understand that. If you just lift weights and eat food, you're going to get healthy, you're going to get stronger, and that's a great feeling, but it's not quite as beautiful as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But if you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as much as you get the high and all the good stuff, it is literally the art of bending joints the wrong way. It is going to break you down. It's going to break your muscles down. It's going to make your nervous system fatigue. It's going to put strain on all your connective tissues. And ultimately, if you do not look after your body, you're going to get injured. So this is the game. And I don't want to, I don't want to be doom and gloom about it, but let's be realistic. Just BJJ isn't enough. Now, I know that nothing else is going to get you feeling as good in that kind of flow state, that really kind of that dopamine high that you get from jiu-jitsu, but that doesn't matter. It's not just about us being jiu-jitsu junkies. It's about us wanting to stay in the game and get good, because that's the thing. You've got to stay in the game a long time to get good. And I was trying to explain this to a guy who'd never heard of jiu-jitsu. I went to the barber. Don't know if you can tell. And I had this guy cut this gentleman was cutting my hair. I'd never been there before. Seemed nice enough. He's from Lebanon, and he'd never heard of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I tried to explain it to him, and I said, "Oh, it's in the UFC when they go on the ground and they wrestle." And he said, "Oh, okay, man, wrestle. Okay." So he still didn't know what I was talking about. Anyway, good dude. And basically, he was trying to understand why you would do this thing. And I said, "Oh, it's fun." And he was like, okay. He just didn't believe me that like choking each other and hyperextending each other's arms was like a fun thing. And really, when we get hard into jiu-jitsu, we fall into this bubble that we just talk to jiu-jitsu people and we all think it's cool. And we watch Flow Grappling, or we watch what's going on in the IBJJF, and what did Gordon Ryan say? What are those Bulletproof boys doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I said to him, it takes about 10 years to get good at it. He was like, what? Why would I do this? Why would I do this? That's too long. I don't want 10 years. I want 1 year, I'd be good. And I was like, no, bro, 10 years. 10 years and you're good. Anyway, he was just like, no. It's okay. No. Just waving me off. I was trying to talk him into doing jiu-jitsu. Do you ever do that? You ever at a party and you get into a conversation, you try and convert people over to the jiu-jitsu course, even after telling them how it totally wrecks you? So here's the thing, guys. I think what we possibly do not fully appreciate is that just doing jiu-jitsu, even though it's enjoyable, is going to lead us down the path to injury. Now, you can only walk that path so far until you have to have a major surgery. Now, major surgery is expensive. Let's not worry about the pain, the painkillers, how it can affect your immune system, potential infections when you're at the hospital. It happens. Australia actually has a great healthcare system when we compare it to so many around the world. And we're kind of spoiled. So we go, oh, our healthcare system's terrible. Compared to a lot of countries, it's not. It's one of the best. But we don't want to go there, guys. We don't want to be in hospital. We don't want to take time off work. We don't want to have time away from our loved ones. We don't want to put like anesthesia into our bodies. That's poison, basically, to kind of keep us hovering between life and death so they can cut our bodies open. Basically, you age your body 5 years for every surgery you have. So if you have to have major reconstructive surgery on your knee, your shoulder, your back, your elbow, anything, this is actually aging you. So we want to avoid it as much as we can. Yes, BJJ requires private health insurance. If you do not have private health insurance and you do BJJ, you are a fool. Trust me, I would say I didn't have it for the first 2 or 3 years of jiu-jitsu, but once I hit my first kind of surgery level injury, I'm a pretty healthy guy. I look after my body, but my goodness, it will blow your mind as to how much money you have to spend on the surgeon, specialists, the anesthetists, the drugs, everything. It sucks. You don't need it. That's what I'm saying to you. So this is why BJJ is not enough. As much as we enjoy it, as much as we get into it, the dark side of jiu-jitsu is it can really fuck us up, and it can have lasting effects for our whole life. You don't want to be 50 years old and can't walk properly. Like there's all this glory about, oh, don't tap. Jesus wouldn't tap, all this kind of nonsense that people say. And we see high-level jiu-jitsu guys getting their ankles broken and getting their arms, hyperextended and just not tapping. And what we don't see is them being hobbled and crippled, not that many years after their career. Now, we see it more in combat sports because they get paid more money and they have more attention on them. So it's more tragic when we see them just being like, 45 years old, 50 years old, and having no brain and can't remember their own name, right, from the concussions. But here's the deal. You are crippling your body through only doing jiu-jitsu. Now, obviously, we talk enough about bulletproof, but this is more about having a sustained vision of jiu-jitsu. If you want to be good at jiu-jitsu, you have to do it from anywhere between 6 to 10 years. That's what I'm going to say right now. If you haven't reached that 6 year mark, that's fine. But you want to get there because you want to know that you understand the art of jiu-jitsu. And it's so big that you got to put time in on it. What does that mean? You got to do it sustainably. So you have to do additional things to look after your body. That's why just doing BJJ by itself isn't healthy, because ultimately it'll break you down more than it will build you up. It tightens your hip flexors, rounds your posture, gives you that kind of Mr. Burns Golemy look. And that's just no good, guys. And what we want to do is see that you all get black belts, you stay in the game as long as you can and be as healthy as you can. So guys, we can love the art and we can be into it as hard as we like, but we have to admit that we've got to eat our vegetables. We've got to do the mobility and we've got to lift the weights, just because this is a high maintenance lifestyle, right? If you have a high maintenance friend or a high maintenance partner, it's going to take a lot of time, energy, and money to sustain that relationship, right? Jiu-jitsu is a high maintenance relationship. So if you want to keep the relationship and get the benefits, then you have to be prepared to pay the costs. What does that mean? You got to lift twice a week and you got to do mobility at least 3 times a week, maybe 5 times a week. You got to be looking after your rig so you can keep it going. My friends, thank you very much for tuning in. I know this is like a bit of a short one, maybe a bit of a weird topic, but it's interesting to me that it doesn't really get brought up because most jiu-jitsu schools are trying to get you to train as much as possible because they want to make their school successful. They want to build everybody up. They want to make as much money as possible. And making money in jiu-jitsu isn't necessarily an easy thing to do. So it would be very rare that you would find an instructor that would say to you, just come in, twice a week, 3 times. They're telling you, no, you come in every single day. You come in as much as you can. Otherwise, you're not trying hard enough. But I'm telling you right now, 3 times a week is great. And if you can hit 4, awesome. So maybe 3 classes in an open mat or 3 classes in a comp class, awesome. That's enough. 4 classes a week, I would say, is the maximum of sustainability. Now, if you're some hard-charging young blood, keen as hell, and trust me, I'm there with you. I want to train twice a day. I want to train 3 times a day. The athlete life is an amazing life until you're injured, and then you lose all your purpose. And you, as a human, have much greater purpose than just physical pursuits. There's mental pursuits. There's interpersonal, social things that you can do with your life, which are amazing. So just narrowing yourself down to one thing, even though in the moment it can feel good, isn't necessarily the best thing you can do with your life. And this is a lesson I've had to learn the hard way. So this is what I want to say to you guys. Super important for you out there. If you're new to this jiu-jitsu journey and you're barely getting like twice a week, all right, then this discussion isn't for you. But if you're someone who loves the art, but now you're finding your body so broken you can't keep it up, we got to put the work in. We got to stay in the game. And that is the key to success, my friends. This race will go on long after us when we're no longer doing it or when we pass on, whatever the situation. The race keeps going, just like the human race. But you want to stay at the front for as long as you can, the best you can. And the best way to do that is by looking after yourself. So as much as we try and train, more training doesn't equal better training. Quality over quantity. 3 to 4 times a week of jiu-jitsu is enough. And if you want to push it, okay, But as long as you can do your maintenance, which is 2 times lifting a week and 3 to 5 times mobility a week. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about and you're seeing this video for the first time, go over to bulletproofforbjj.com and find out what it's all about. For the rest of you, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time on a Sunday evening. I'm super pumped, and really my new book has come out, which is Jugo, The Power of Jiu-Jitsu. Shameless plug. There it is, my friends. Like I said, I'm very obsessive. Just trying to get it out the light. All right. I wrote a book. It's aimed at 10 and 12-year-olds. And really, it's for anyone who does jiu-jitsu. It's about the first ever BJJ superhero. So you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. If you're interested and you want to find out more about it, just give me a message. But yeah, jiu-jitsu is amazing, and I've made it my life, and I love my life. But I make sure I do the work, and I would like you guys to do the same, because I want you to stay on the path. All right, my friends, thank you so much. I hope you have a great week. And if you have any questions, or you would like a particular topic discussed on the YouTube live, let me know, and I'll do the research. I'll write the notes, and we'll discuss it. But pick a good subject so everybody can benefit from your questions. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all of you. And in the meantime, between now and when I see you next, stay bulletproof.